So let's jump right into exploring something that kind of touches almost every interaction you have,
Hmm.
often without you even, realizing it. We're looking at the principles found in Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power,
That's right. And the aim here isn't just a list, really. It's more about trying to extract the um, the fundamental principles.
the core ideas.
Yeah, the recurring themes, the mechanics that, according to this material, drive the dynamics of power. The goal is to give you a sort of framework for understanding these forces.
Something practical, maybe,
Yeah,
you can use to navigate things.
exactly. In your own world, whether that's like your career, personal relationships, or just, broader social stuff.
And what's immediately striking, I think, is how this material frames power. It's presented as, well, funnily amoral.
Mm-hmm. Not good or bad in itself.
Right, it's just a force, a tool,
Mm.
and the lessons it draws, it claims, come from literally thousands of years of history. It suggests something like, what, 3,000 years of human experience?
Yeah, distilling that history, combined with some pretty deep insights into human nature. Psychology is key here.
Because power dynamics always play out between people, right?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is the perspective shift it encourages. It asks you to look at power objectively, almost trying to de-villainize it, just so you can understand how it works.
Separating the tool from the user.
Kind of. It
Mhm.
suggests the ethics aren't in the force itself, but in, the intent and actions of the person using it.
Okay, so where do we start unpacking this? Strategic thinking feels like a pretty foundational pillar in the material.
Oh, absolutely. Strategic thinking is presented as just paramount. It's not about reacting in the moment.
More about foresight, planning.
Definitely. Cultivating a genuinely long-term perspective. Law 29, for example, is all about planning all the way to the end.
Thinking through all the steps.
And anticipating, every conceivable obstacle. The idea is to avoid those impulsive, kind of emotional reactions that often lead to mistakes.
You think of someone like Bismarck, maybe. Unifying Germany that wasn't exactly spontaneous.
Precisely. That's a classic illustration. Years of careful maneuvering, looking way down the road, and tied right into that strategic thinking is adaptability.
Flexibility.
Yeah, the material puts a lot of weight on flexibility.
Is that like Law 48? Assume formlessness. Be like water.
Exactly like water. That's the principle. Remain fluid, unpredictable, highly adaptable. The material argues that being rigid is a major weakness.
Because it makes you predictable. Easy to counter.
Right, easy to break. Think of Miyamoto Musashi always changing his style, or Bruce Lee's whole philosophy. Even military leaders like Rommel adapting constantly. You adjust your ship to the environment.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a catch, isn't there? The material mentions a nuance.
It does, a crucial one. While you want to be formless to your adversaries, you still need enough underlying structure. Maybe a clear goal or consistent values, so your allies aren't totally lost.
Ah, okay. So it's strategic formlessness, not just chaos.
Right. It's a tool. And then part of that whole strategic package is timing.
The right moment.
Timing is presented as, well, almost everything. Law 35. Master the art of timing. Knowing when to act decisively.
And when not to.
Just as important. Knowing when to wait patiently. The material suggests you should never seem rushed.
Why is that?
Because hurrying signals a lack of control. Think of like a master investor waiting for just the right market opening.
Or military leaders using delaying tactics,
Mhm.
like Fabius against Hannibal.
Exactly. Fabius Maximus is a prime historical example. Patience, in this view, can be a very powerful strategic pose, wearing the opponent down.
Okay, so you've got the thinking, the adaptability, the timing. The next big layer this material explores seems to be how you appear to others. Perception. Image.
Huge. Perception management and image control are central. The material basically argues that how others perceive you is often more potent than objective reality.
What isn't seen doesn't count.
In essence, yes. Which is why Law 5, so much depends on reputation, guard it with your life, is presented as such a cornerstone.
Right. It says a strong reputation alone can intimidate, even win for you, without direct conflict. Like a self-fulfilling myth.
Exactly, and because it's so powerful, you have to guard it fiercely. The material really highlights how difficult it is to rebuild a reputation once it's tarnished.
Can you give examples?
Sure, figures like George Washington very carefully cultivating his image of integrity, or Queen Elizabeth I with her whole Virgin Queen persona to consolidate power, even the Rothschild family's reputation for financial reliability, all conferred immense influence.
But focusing purely on image,
Yeah.
doesn't that risk seeming fake? Does the material address that?
It does offer that caveat. Being overly preoccupied with appearances can backfire, make you seem false, or even disconnect you from what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Yet paradoxically, you also need visibility, right? Law 6 is court attention. Especially early on, if you want influence, you need to be noticed.
So it's a balancing act
Yeah,
between getting attention and keeping that solid reputation from Law 5.
exactly. The material suggests linking your name to a distinctive image, carving out your place in the sky, so to speak.
And how you carry yourself plays into this directly.
Absolutely. Law 34. Act like a king to be treated like one. Your bearing, your demeanor, it projects an aura that influences how people see you and treat you.
Project confidence, dignity.
Self-assurance. It naturally inspires respect, according to this perspective. Empress Catherine the Great is given as an example of someone who really mastered projecting that regal authority.
And there's a subtle part of appearance management too, making hard things look easy.
Ah, yes, Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless.
Hide the sweat.
Pretty much. By concealing the sheer labor and struggle behind your results, you enhance the perceived value. You seem incredibly efficient, maybe even brilliant. Effortless mastery.
But it's not saying be lazy, right?
No, no. The material distinguishes this from actual laziness or simple deception about results, and it acknowledges that sometimes showing the effort can be inspiring, just in different contexts.
Okay, let's maybe shift to a set of principles that often get people talking. Maybe the most controversial ones.
Yeah.
Deception and concealment.
Yeah, these are definitely presented not just as like occasional tactics, but as pretty fundamental strategies for navigating power, described as essential tools.
Like Law 3. Conceal your intentions.
That's presented as one of the most fundamental. Keep others in the dark about your real aims. Why? It prevents them from anticipating your moves.
Keeps you in control.
Right. Makes it much harder for them to block you or undermine you. You use surprise, misdirection, maybe smokescreens.
Thinking of historical figures, Bismarck again, Talleyrand. Wasn't there that story about Hannibal using oxen with torches?
Exactly. A classic example of misdirection to deceive an enemy army. And closely linked to concealing intentions is Law 4. Always say less than necessary.
The power of silence. Or, well, brevity.
Strategic brevity, yes. It projects power and control because you seem deliberate, thoughtful. It preserves a kind of mystique.
You don't seem too common.
And crucially, the less you say, the less likely you are to make a mistake, say something foolish, or accidentally reveal something important.
And doesn't it also make other people uncomfortable? Maybe prompt them to talk more and reveal things?
Exactly. It can definitely draw others out. Think of the oracle at Delphi speaking in riddles, or Louis XIV using silence to keep courtiers guessing. Even Andy Warhol's really brief, enigmatic interview answers.
There's that Leonardo da Vinci quote too, isn't there? About talking too much.
Yeah, putting yourself at the listener's mercy. Very relevant here. But it's important. The material notes, this isn't about being a mute all the time.
Right, it's strategic.
Strategic taciturnity. You have to gauge the situation. Sometimes clear communication is absolutely necessary.
And what about gathering information? That can involve deception too, right?
Yeah.
Law 14. Pose as a friend. Work as a spy.
Mm-hmm. The idea is to gather vital intelligence subtly while appearing harmless, maybe even friendly. It's presented as a key strategic deception principle.
Tied into understanding people's psychology, their weak spots.
Exactly. Understanding their underlying motivations, their vulnerabilities, their thumbscrews, as Law 33 puts it. It's definitely a pragmatic approach, one that challenges maybe more traditional ideas about trust.
Which leads nicely into Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity. This one feels particularly calculated.
It is. Very calculated. This principle suggests using acts of kindness or honesty not out of genuine feeling, but specifically to build a false sense of trust.
To lower someone's guard.
Precisely. Create an opening for influence that you can exploit later. The material is pretty blunt. One sincere and honest move will cover over dozens of dishonest ones. It's about leveraging psychology to disarm people.
But wait, doesn't that seem to clash with Law 3? Conceal your intentions. Sometimes you hide everything, sometimes you reveal strategically.
That's a really sharp observation. And the material implies that, yeah, effective power players have to navigate these apparent contradictions. It depends on the context.
So sometimes being mysterious is best, other times a little calculated openness works better.
It seems so. It highlights that applying these principles isn't rigid. It requires judgment. And there are other deception tactics too, like Law 21, play a sucker to catch a sucker.
Pretending to be less smart than you are.
Right, to manipulate people who underestimate you. Or Law 26, keep your hands clean, using others as scapegoats.
Distancing yourself from the dirty work.
Exactly, concealing your direct involvement. And then there's the use of dramatic spectacles, Law 37.
Ah, the showmanship, the flair.
Yes, creating compelling visuals, dramatic events. It can distract people, serve as a smokescreen, capture attention by appealing to emotions, fantasies.
Sounds like it connects to other laws. Courting attention, playing to fantasies.
Definitely linked to Law 6, Law 32, even Law 43 about hearts and minds. But there's a caution. Don't prioritize spectacle over substance. And sometimes blending in is actually the smarter move.
Okay, let's maybe switch gears slightly. How does this material talk about relationships? Some of the advice sounds pretty counterintuitive. Law 2, never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies.
Yeah, that one directly challenges conventional wisdom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The argument presented is that friends can be unpredictable. Why? Because of envy, personal feelings, the weight of expectations.
Making them potential liabilities, even betrayers.
Potentially, whereas conversely, a former enemy, if you win them over, might actually be more reliable.
Really? Why?
Because they have something to prove. And the relationship can be based on a clearer foundation of, say, mutual self-interest rather than potentially volatile emotions.
It's a very pragmatic view, maybe even cynical.
It's presented as a cold observation of historical dynamics. Another principle about relationships is Law 20. Do not commit to anyone.
Stay independent. Keep your options open.
Exactly. Avoid taking sides too strongly or becoming too closely aligned with one person or faction. It preserves your ability to maneuver, negotiate.
And maybe play different sides against each other.
Potentially. It's about maintaining leverage. But underlying all of this relationship strategy is Law 19. Know who you're dealing with.
Seems essential, right?
Absolutely crucial, according to the material. You have to understand the character, motivations, and potential reactions of the people you're interacting with.
To avoid provoking the wrong person or miscalculating your approach.
Precisely. It's not just about your moves, but how they'll land on that specific individual.
Okay, turning now to leveraging others and gaining control. Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
This is presented as a path to, well, efficiency and enhanced perception. You leverage others' talents and labor, save your own energy.
And then look amazing by taking the credit.
Essentially, yes. You appear incredibly productive, maybe even godlike in your speed and efficiency by taking credit for the whole orchestrated effort.
And making sure people need you. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you.
Become indispensable. The material argues that if you develop unique skills, provide essential services, make yourself central, you gain significant leverage.
Because they can't afford to lose you.
Right. They can't easily oppose you if they rely on you. Think of Henry Ford tying loyalty to wages, perhaps. Or even historical court jesters who became invaluable because they could say things others couldn't.
And structuring situations, making sure you win no matter what choice someone makes.
That's Law 31. Control the options. You set up the choices so that any path they take ultimately leads to an outcome that benefits you.
An illusion of choice.
Exactly. Leverages psychology. But the material as a caveat, you should probably offer at least one genuinely acceptable option to avoid just breeding resentment.
Let's talk about conflict. Dealing with enemies, taking action. Law 15 sounds pretty harsh. Crush your enemy. Totally.
It's ruthless, yeah. But the material presents it as a necessary safeguard. If someone is a genuine enemy, you have to ensure they're completely incapacitated.
So they can't retaliate later.
Right. Examples like Moses or Genghis Khan are sometimes used to illustrate the supposed consequences of not fully eliminating a threat.
But what if you're the weaker one? There's Law 22. Use the surrender tactic.
Ah, the strategic retreat. When you're clearly weaker, a calculated surrender isn't necessarily defeat. It can buy you time.
Time to recover, regroup, plan.
Exactly. It denies your opponent the full satisfaction of victory, maybe makes them complacent, and allows you to potentially turn that seeming loss into a future advantage.
Like Fabius delaying against Hannibal, or maybe the Viet Cong using strategic retreats. The material frames it pragmatically, doesn't it? Like just using psychology.
Yes, it separates the tactic from moral judgment. And then there's the flip side, taking initiative boldly. Law 28. Enter action with boldness.
Timidity is dangerous, it says.
Precisely. Confidence, decisive action. These are key. Even if you make mistakes, the material suggests more audacity can often cover or correct earlier errors.
It has a psychological impact.
A powerful one. On yourself, boosting confidence, and on others, inspiring respect or maybe fear. Think of Caesar crossing the Rubicon, entrepreneurs taking big risks, Alexander the Great. The power of boldness.
There are a few more specific principles worth touching on. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor.
Scarcity creates value. If you're always around, always available, you become common. Strategic withdrawal makes you more desired, more respected.
Overfamiliarity breeds contempt.
That's the core idea. Coco Chanel carefully managing her public appearances is sometimes cited as an example.
And keeping people guessing. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivating an air of unpredictability.
Yeah, keeps people off balance, prevents them from taking you for granted. Strategic inconsistency, unexpected actions. It elicits attention, maybe fear.
Examples.
Figures like Vlad the Impaler, maybe Alcibiades with his shifting loyalties. Even poker players using unpredictable betting patterns.
Okay. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes.
Establish your own identity. Forge your own path rather than trying to fill the void left by a powerful predecessor. It's hard to gain your own power living in someone else's shadow. JFK establishing his own image after Eisenhower is often mentioned.
Law 32. Play to people's fantasies.
Tapping into desires, dreams. People's need to believe in something beyond the mundane. Magic, happy endings. It's presented as a powerful way to gain influence.
Offering escapism. Fulfilling needs.
Exactly. Linked to Law 27 about the need to believe. Walt Disney creating magical worlds is a prime example. But the caution is, don't fall for the fantasies yourself. And related to that, Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds.
Appealing to emotions, beliefs, not just logic.
Right. Persuasion on a deeper level.
Mhm.
And one more maybe. Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have.
Emotional control. Appearing superior.
Pretty much. By seeming indifferent to what's unattainable, you avoid showing desire or vulnerability. You maintain composure, perceive strength. Now, it's really important to stress the material is quite clear. These aren't like rigid rules you follow blindly.
Right. They're framed more as observations, and applying them needs. Will care.
A lot of care and nuance. You have to assess the specific power dynamics, figure out which principles might even be relevant, and constantly observe the people around you.
It sounds like it demands a very conscious, analytical approach, thinking about the long-term effects.
Yeah, a systematic methodology is implied. Understand yourself, understand your environment, the key players. Cultivating observational skills is vital.
And you have to choose, presumably, which laws fit your goals. Maybe your own ethics.
That's implied. And the material suggests maybe starting small. Integrating less confrontational laws like Law 4, say less, or Law 5, reputation, gradually, experimentally.
Context is key.
Totally. Tailoring the approach to the specific culture, the individuals involved, always keeping that long-term perspective in mind.
And being aware of when a tactic could totally backfire, the reversals mentioned.
Exactly. Which brings us right into the big discussion, the debate around this material.
It's definitely seen as controversial. Many people react strongly, feeling it endorses manipulation, deception.
And that reaction is understandable. The material presents these principles as observations of how power has functioned historically, and it argues still functions in certain environments. It doesn't necessarily frame them as moral guidelines.
It puts the ethical responsibility on the individual using them.
Squarely on the individual. But let's be honest, many of the principles do involve tactics like deception, strategic manipulation, exploiting vulnerabilities.
Laws like selective honesty, 12. Controlling options, 31. Playing to fantasies, 32. They raise real ethical questions about interaction, autonomy.
Absolutely. And the material doesn't entirely shy away from potential negative consequences, fostering distrust, limiting freedom, creating unhealthy dependencies. But it also presents the counter-argument.
That understanding these tactics is crucial for self-defense.
Exactly, like studying military strategy to protect yourself. Even if you have no intention of attacking, you need to recognize when these tactics are being used against you.
And the apparent contradictions we talked about earlier, when to conceal versus when to be selectively open, that highlights it's not simple, right? Requires judgment.
Constant judgment based on the situation. Ultimately, the material challenges you to see the world through this particular lens, and then leaves it up to you. How will you engage with these dynamics? What principles will guide your actions?
So bringing it all together, looking into these principles can offer a maybe powerful lens for understanding some really complex social dynamics and recognizing tactics others might use.
Definitely. But applying them effectively and, importantly, responsibly. That requires critical thinking, self-awareness, and really grappling with the ethical side of things. These are potent ideas. Their impact really depends on your intention and how you choose to use them.